Every veteran has a story of sacrifice, courage, humor, and heartache. Each week, Veteran Story Hour captures these remarkable stories firsthand in the voices of those who've served. Recorded live from the weekly Friday brunch in the Saluda, Virginia studio in Waynesboro, this is more than a podcast. It's a living history, preserving the legacy of America's heroes. You're listening to Veteran Story Hour, Voices of Valor, presented by Saluda, Virginia. Let's begin. Some guys join the military at 18 because they know exactly who they are. Doug Williams joined at 29 because he was still figuring it out. And honestly, that might make this story even better. He was already a police officer, already a husband, already a father, already carrying the weight of life when he walked into a recruiter's office and made a decision that would completely change him. Not just professionally, spiritually. This is a story about service, but not the kind that you put on a resume. It's about a guy from Waynesboro who chased purpose through patrol cars, deployment rotations, basic training in the middle of COVID, and eventually found something bigger than all of it. Faith, brotherhood, leadership, redemption. Doug talks about being called grandpa in basic training at 29, deploying to Syria, learning leadership from soldiers younger than him, and why the military became the greatest career decision he ever made. But more than that, he talks honestly about regret, growth, family, and the moment he realized God had been walking beside him the whole time. This one's funny, this one's real, and this one's going to stick with you. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Veteran Story Hour, Voices of Valor with Doug Williams.
All right, so we are here today on Voices of Valor with our guest.
My name's Doug Williams.
And Doug has graciously volunteered to come in and do his podcast today. We're setting up at the Salute Open House today, so I snagged him from outside.
Yeah, so I'm here working a booth for the Waynesboro Police Department, but I happen to serve part-time in the Virginia Army National Guard. And I guess today I'm just going to share about how where my interest came from and how ultimately I ended up joining the Guard. The interest started in high school. I went to Waynesboro High School. I was a graduate of 2010. I began speaking with a recruiter. At that time, it was Sergeant West. And he was adamant that the Guard would be the best route for me. And I agreed with him at the time. However, my parents had other plans. They wanted me to stay as far away from the recruiters as possible.
I know that feeling.
Yeah. It's funny how, at that time, my parents were like, stay away from the recruiters. And then, life circumstances, I ended up becoming a recruiter at some point. It's just crazy how things work out.
They're like, stay away from guys just like you.
Yeah. And I'm like, Mom, I deal with parents that are, just like you were. And, we have to build trust and have to build those partnerships and relationships. But, so it started in high school. Again, class of 2010. I was into sports, wrestling, football, track, so I was athletic, and, I think the recruiters picked up on that at the time. They're like, yeah, you'd be a good fit for the Army. And I was like, yeah, you're right. Let's sign. Parents were like, no shot. Yeah, stay away from the recruiters. They wanted me to go to college, which, I ended up going to Liberty after I graduated. So I didn't join at that time. Went to Liberty for a year. School wasn't for me right after high school. I wanted to enter the workforce full time. And so I worked with my grandpa one summer after college, and then I went to Target Distribution. I was there for about a year, maybe a year and a half. And then, my goals, I wanted to become a police officer. So I've always had interest in like public service. I guess I was a huge fan of like Marvel Comics and DC. And so I loved like Superman and Captain America, all your heroes. So I wanted to get into public service in some capacity. So I ended up applying to the Waynesboro Police Department in 2013. I was hired, and then so I served at the Waynesboro Police Department, had a successful career early on. You know, I was at the time the youngest member to ever join the SWAT team, which was a pretty cool achievement.
There you go.
There's been
Captain America.
Yeah. Since then, there's been even younger guys join. So good for them. You know, it's a great opportunity. And when you're young, that's the best time to do it, because that is certainly a young man's game for sure.
Oh, yeah. Don't do it when you're 40.
No. Even 35, you know, I'm like, man, my pride kind of wants to do it, but I'm like, nah, do I really want to? I don't know. We'll see. TBD on that. But yeah, so I served at the police department from 13, and then around 2019, I was like, man, you know, I started making some poor life decisions, and, you know, one thing led to another, and you know, I didn't pray about it. I didn't discuss anything with my wife or my family about it. I just decided I was going to talk to a recruiter. So that's what I did. Shout out to Sergeant First Class Vanderveer. He's retired now. Great guy. He was a great recruiter. And so I joined. He asked me if I wanted to go infantry, and I was like, nah, you know, I'm already a police officer. What is it? What other, like, what skill is that going to help me with? And outside of being like a firefighter or, you know, a paramedic or something, I don't, you know, I wanted to learn a skill.
Right.
So I ended up going the electrician route in the Army. So by MOS, it's 12 Romeo, 12R, and that's an interior electrician. So let's see, I joined in August of 2019. I remained in the RSP, which is the Recruit Sustainment Program. I was there for about 6 months, and then shipped off to good old Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri.
Been there. Such a wonderful place in the winter.
Yeah, freezing cold. Don't miss it.
Not at all.
I have no desire to go back, to be honest. Oh, yeah, man, I tell you what, this podcast go on and on just with the stories from Basic.
Oh, yeah.
Basic stories are the best, too. You know, it's like you think, you know, at the time it sucks, but some of your funniest memories are in Basic. Outside of a deployment, I would say Basic is one of your better times in the military.
Well, yeah, it's the most memorable because you all get broken together.
Yeah. And I joined at 29, so I was up there in age, and I was pops. I was grandpa of Basic training, and, you know, it was funny. So, you know, the jokes never ended, but, man, the characters you meet in Basic, they're hilarious.
At least you were the old guy at 29. We had a guy in our class who was 41.
Oh yeah, no, there were older individuals than I was in Basic. I was amongst the oldest, but there were some in their late 30s and 40s, and
oh yeah,
you know, age waivers were needed.
Yeah, and you're like, why are you doing this now?
You know, better late than never. I think it's worth it to serve just for the, you know, the sense of accomplishment you get, the service to your country. But then if you're looking at like a benefit perspective, just the VA benefits alone, it's a no-brainer. Like,
oh yeah,
join.
Well, I mean, that, and you look at it and it's like, well, what if I don't like what they tell me to do? Well, in 4 years, you can leave.
Welcome to life. Welcome to being an adult.
Right.
Because you're going to get that everywhere you go.
Absolutely. You're going to get a boss you don't like. You're going to do something you don't want to do. Like,
exactly.
Why not get it all out of the way in the beginning?
Yeah. So I guess the weird thing for me is, you know, being that I joined at 29, there were periods in my career where I had to swallow my pride at times and realize that there were going to be kids in their 20s that outranked me. You know, it's funny, and I didn't have a whole lot of respect for the guys that were younger than me that outranked me. You know, I still listened to them. I still obeyed what I was asked to do. But it certainly wasn't because I respected them at the time, you know.
Oh yeah. That
all changed. My perspective changed in 2022 when we shipped out to Kuwait and Syria. I had a squad leader, Staff Sergeant Wilson, now Sergeant First Class Wilson, who he was 26, I believe, and I was how old was I? 30, I don't know. I'm losing track of time. I'm 35 now, so we can do that math later.
You said you graduated from Waynesboro, so.
Yeah. Math isn't my strong suit. I joined the Army, not the Air Force, right?
That's it. No Space Force.
Yeah, but that definitely changed when I worked for Staff Sergeant Wilson because he was wise ahead of his years. He was a great leader. He adopted the servant leadership uh, style of training. He certainly did things I didn't always agree with, and he and I from time to time butted heads. But ultimately, later on he's become one of my greatest, if not my greatest friend.
There you go.
So, and he's currently over in the Horn of Africa right now. I can't disclose his location, but he's got an awesome mission going on over there with the 180th. Where was I? We were talking about, I think we were still in basic training, weren't we?
Yep. Yes. Where you were.
Oh, Fort Leonard Wood. Yeah. So, let's see. Graduated basic in around May of 2020. The pandemic was in full force, full swing. It was crazy. And ironically enough, my faith, where I stand with my faith.
Oh, yeah.
My walk with Christ, it all started in 2020 during the pandemic, during basic training.
Somebody wise once told me there's two things you find when you join the military. You either find, what is it? It was
religion.
Yeah, you find jail or religion.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So, religion is definitely the best route, and it served me well. Funny enough, when I was in reception, you remember a good old reception, the 3 days of nothing but falling asleep while you're standing up in line waiting to be seen by a doctor.
Oh, yeah. Ours was longer than 3 days because I got there during Christmas break.
So this is how I know God has a sense of humor and how he works in mysterious ways. So I was checking out. We were asked to go buy hygiene products this was our last day at reception. We were about to get shipped off to good old boot, good old basic, right? And I was in line at the exchange there in reception. And as I was checking out, I had all my hygiene items laid out, and I looked down right next to the register was a stack of military Bibles. And I was like, here's some good reading material. Like during my downtime, which I'm going to have probably a lot of, like you hear the stories of hurry up and wait. There's a lot of downtime in the military.
Oh, there is.
Yeah. And so I picked up a copy of the Christian Standard Military Edition Bible. It's a beautiful, beautiful Bible, by the way. It's got leather. And so I bought that just so I could have reading material. And while I was in basic, I ended up having an injury that could have very much set me back, and I could have ended up being recycled. And the pandemic just kicked off in full force. And I told you I had made some poor decisions in life that led me into the military. So I had a lot of regrets, right? Like there were people at home that, man, I was like, my wife, for example, I was like, man, like I should have treated her better. I wasn't the best dad at the time.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of regrets. And so ultimately, this injury paired with, fear of COVID, because at that time I had no knowledge of what COVID was. The information I had was all passed down from our drill sergeants, and they made it sound like it was the zombie apocalypse. They made it sound like everyone was dying. Now I get it. Some people did suffer from, COVID-19, and, like my father-in-law, he rest in peace. He just passed away last week, and he had this rare, lung condition called some hypertension disease, which ultimately he was losing his lung capacity.
Okay.
And his lungs began to crystallize, and ultimately he passed away due to oxygen, like lack of oxygen.
Right.
He ran out of air, and that all sparked from COVID-19. This was not an issue until after he had COVID. And that was 5 years ago when he first got it. So he's been dealing with this for the past 5 years. So I know where he is. So I'll see him again. So rest in peace, Eric Canan. What a great man. He was a chef too.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. So every holiday was we ate well.
Oh, I understand that.
So yeah, sorry. So the story's back and all over the place
you're
here.
Good, man.
But so back to basic training. So I bought my Bible. I began reading it. And funny enough, I had my battle buddy that was assigned to me was an atheist. He didn't believe in anything, and he asked me on a whim. He said, "So you're a Christian?" And without much thought, I just said, "Yeah, I am." Because I did grow up in church. My parents took me to church, but as I got older, I started to have my doubts. I was like, man, you mean to tell me that this guy named Moses went into it? This is one example of many, right? Like, he took that staff and the Red Sea parted and he marched, 1 million Israelites out of Egypt. It seemed so hard for me to believe at that time.
Oh yeah.
But it wasn't because my parents didn't try. We were involved with churches growing up, so I wasn't a stranger to that. But in basic, again, so my battle buddy asked me, he's like, so you're a Christian? I was like, again, without much thought, I was like, yeah, I am. And so we began doing Bible studies together. And he, later on, near the end of basic, he ultimately ended up accepting Christ. And he did before I did. But I was talking about the regret, some of the challenges I was having with, feeling bad for how I had treated my family, my lack of being present as a father. Like, I had many regrets. So ultimately I prayed. I humbled myself. I got on my hands and knees and I prayed. I was like, God, look, if you're real, please present yourself. Show me that everything's going to be okay. And I had this injury that was truly, it was a very good chance that I was going to get recycled. Well, I followed up with my doctor a week later after praying, and he looked at my injury. He said, Private, you're not human.
He said, you're good.
This thing's healing. Like, I'm going to release you back to full duty, full contact. Not that I ever went light duty by any means, because
Right.
even though they gave me my paperwork, I took it back to my drill sergeants, and they're like, Private, I don't care. Ripped it up, threw it in the trash, push. I was like, all right, well, here we go. So that was my first answered prayer. And I was like, okay, all right, maybe it's coincidence, maybe it's not. Began reading some more stories, began praying some more, and I graduated. I got top shot, which was a blessing. I did have some prior training from the police department when I went. So
yeah, but
I kind of had the leg up there. So that was one achievement, as well as getting a promotion. So I went in as an E2. And then I promoted to E3, so private first class, before graduating. Then I went off to AIT, learned basics of electrician, and came home. I was back for about 2 weeks, and I had an opportunity presented itself, and they were looking for electrical engineers. I was like, guys, I'm barely an electrician in the Army.
Right.
Like, I'm not ready for this electrical engineer thing. And they're like, yeah, come on, you'll be great at it. I was like, all right, well. And at that time, it was a pay increase. It was a $50,000 salary apprenticeship. And at that time, it was more than I was making at the police department. So I was like, let me give this a shot. Man, I was there for about a month. And I was shadowing one of the most brilliant minds I'd ever met. His name was Germ, and he worked at Vertex. He was one of their top engineers. If not, he was their top engineer. And, man, every time he spoke, it was like a foreign language. I had no idea what he was talking about. But whatever he asked me to do, I did it, and I did it to 150%. And they picked up on that very quickly. So it wasn't very long after that, I ended up in a meeting with the owner and CEO, Dana Pittman, who ultimately promoted me there in the staff meeting. And I was, unaware that was even coming. He was like, hey, look, I'm going to put you in charge of this section. And ultimately I had about 13 employees that I worked with. And that was my first, my first time at ever being in a position of leadership. So that was new, but it was an honor, and I loved the job. I was there for a few years, and then in 2021, they began taking volunteers for a deployment to the Middle East. And that was one of my goals early on. Is like, I told my wife, I was like, look, I wanna deploy. This is something I've always wanted to do, and she's like, go for it. And so I did. And didn't know where we were going at the time. Excuse me. We did know we were going to the Middle East. And so the whole unit, we ended up going to Kuwait. I was in Kuwait for about maybe a week or two before I received orders to go to Syria. And we broke off into small fire teams. And little did I know that I would be all over Syria. Like, we traveled in small teams, and we went to about four different FOBs out there.
Always on the move.
Always on the move. And it was project after project after project. And most of my construction knowledge developed while I was deployed.
I believe that, because you got to build it before you can use it.
Yeah, but back to the leadership thing. It was a weird thing too, because now I'm in my 30s, and I I was a specialist because I didn't have time and grade yet. I hadn't attended any BLC or ALC or anything like that. So I was a specialist, and they assigned me to the position of team leader. Later on in the deployment, there was a team leader. He was an E5. He held the rank and the position. I held the position, not the rank. And he had been, I'm not going to say his name just in case he ever hears this. I don't want to embarrass him, but he began dropping the ball, and they assigned him under my leadership for a period of time. So you can imagine.
Oh yeah, I'm sure that went over awesome.
It went over awesome,
He was probably thrilled.
But in the most humble way possible, just had to let him know, like, hey, position outranks your rank. Like,
yep.
So, and then we worked together well over time. I think he was just burnt out, and I probably would be too if I had served as many years as he has. So, man, I'm telling you what, though, the deployment was amazing. It was amazing. It's the best time I've had in the military. The friendships.
Oh yeah, a lot of those guys, you'll never get that bond anywhere else.
Yeah, it's deeper than blood bonds, man. I would do anything for these guys. The people that I lived with in a combat zone, like they're my brothers. I'd do anything for them. Yeah, man. And then I came back from my deployment, and that brought me back. And then unfortunately, that company I had been working for closed their doors. And so I was like, man, like, what else do I know? I've been a police officer my entire adult life. I'm still pretty new to the military. And so I ended up going back to the police department, and they brought me back. And I've been back on the books. I've been working with them since, let's see, when did I come back? It was in 2023. It was around May of 2023. I came back to work for them. And shortly after that, I was reached out to by Sergeant Vanderveer, now Master Sergeant Vanderveer, and he had asked me if I had any interest in recruiting. And I didn't really know at first, but I did know one thing, is that if I was on recruiting duty, that I would be unable to deploy.
Yep, you'd be home.
I'd be home, right? Stressful tour, by far the most stressful thing I've ever done in my life was recruiting, but it kept me home with my family, and the money was great. I had an opportunity to pay off some debt, bought my first house, so utilized the VA loan.
Oh yeah.
One of the many benefits of being a service member. And and my life has made some crazy turns. Like, I did everything backwards. Like, most people join the military, learn their skill, learn their MOS, and then they come back into the civilian workforce. I joined later, but I think I've had an advantage over a lot of my peers because of the knowledge I had developed in the civilian sector before coming over to the military.
Yeah, I know. So I was very similar to you. Granted, I was 21 when I joined the military, but they say you go, you do your skill, you get out, people go do that same skill, right?
Yeah.
So I got out. The Army trained me to go do what I did. Got out, did that, and was like, God, I hate this. And so now I don't do anything even remotely close to that. Started a whole new career path.
Yeah.
Just because I hated being in the hospital.
Yeah. Man, I'm going to tell you one thing. The military opens so many doors. The opportunities when you get out are endless. I would say while you're young, your best bet is to enter into the military. There's thousands of reasons, and I could sit here and name them all. But it separates you from your competition. When you and your peers begin to apply for a competitive job, I tend to think that a lot of your employers these days are going to look and see, okay, this guy has military experience. We're comparing that to someone who has a college degree. And they're like, man, this guy actually has work experience.
Yeah, he knows
studying,
what to do.
And he's well-versed with structure. He's going to be on time. He's going to be dependable.
Yeah, he's going to show up to work.
And he's going to work harder than anyone else in the building.
Yeah.
I tend to think that being military is your best option.
Well, and you also have so many organizations that are military owned, operated, and in that avenue that gives you access to, that they will hire you simply because they know where you come from.
Yeah. Well, look, make no mistake, the Waynesboro Police Department, I think many police departments are a great option, and it's an absolute honor to serve your community. Shout out Waynesboro Police Department. They've been great to me personally. But I think the best job I've ever had is the military. It has been the best career option I've ever made, was joining the military.
Oh yeah.
The experiences you gain from it, you can't get out here anywhere else.
Well, no, the experiences, the people you meet, the friendships you make, bonds that are formed.
That part.
Because a lot of times, when you go out into the civilian world and you go get a job, most of the time you don't know anything about anybody who works there.
Mm-hmm.
Versus in the military, yeah, that guy may outrank me, but I can still tell you things about him.
Yeah.
Just based on my interaction with him, because you actually get to interact with people who lead you.
Yeah. But you'll meet some of the worst leaders and some of the best leaders. You don't know what you're getting when you get to a unit.
Oh, yeah.
You have no idea what you're getting. But everyone's embracing the suck together, and that makes it bearable.
Yeah.
That's the part. That's what makes it bearable, is we're all embracing the suck together, and then back to the competition part, like, not only do you have the military experience, if you choose to do so, you can go to college, depending on the branch you choose. Like, I know the National Guard, if you serve a 6-year contract, you can go to school for free out of the state's dime and the federal budget. You can tap into the state and federal budget. If you do it right, you shouldn't owe anything, and you should have a degree with $0 owed at the end of that.
Yep. That's how I was. So the Army does that too. Because when I got my bachelor's degree, when we ultimately decided, hey, we were going to get out, that was one thing Leah and I talked about was, we made our little checklist of things that if we were going to get out, these are all things that need to be done.
Yeah.
And finishing my degree was on that list. Because at that point I was like, well, it really doesn't matter what I have a degree in, but I know I need one at something.
Yeah. Well, the best career decision I've ever made was again, it was joining the military. It was deciding to talk to a Guard recruiter and make that decision to enlist, which ultimately led me to the best decision I've ever made, period, which was deciding to take up relationship with Jesus, to start following him. Because, buddy, listen, my life has changed. When I say 180, that doesn't do it justice.
Oh, yeah.
Like, the people that know me and know me well know I was one way, and now I'm this other person, and they're like, what changed? And I'm like, dude, this guy named Jesus, man, he changed my life.
Yep.
And if you listen to a little bit of what he has to say and you begin applying some of those teachings into your life, it's crazy.
Well, yeah, people always ask about, how do you know what to do? Well, this is an instruction manual.
Yeah, yeah.
Just go read this and do this.
So I don't know how many listeners you're going to have. Hopefully you have a ton. I hope you have thousands. No, scratch that. I hope you have millions of listeners. And everyone that hears this, I hope that you will consider following Jesus Christ, because it is the best decision I've ever made. And if he can change me, he can change anybody. And he can change any circumstance. The absolute best decision I've ever made, hands down.
So I have a follow-up question to something you said earlier.
Go for it.
So when you decided to join the Guard, and you said you didn't talk to anybody, like wife, family, nobody. So how did they take that?
Well, I have been old Doug, the guy I was referring to earlier. He used to be of the philosophy, the mindset that, it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission. And now, I'd be lying if I said that I still don't do that from time to time. But for the most part, I'm more of a, let's pray about it, especially if it's a big decision. Like if it's a new tool that I don't have at Lowe's or something like that, a lot of times I'll still ask for forgiveness. But if it's a big purchase, I'll talk to the wife about it first. That's,
Yeah, I mean, you can't
but
go buy
like
a new
big
charger.
life decisions, right? Like big life decisions, it's going to be some thought and some prayer going into it. Whereas old Doug used to be very hasty and would make a decision on the fly. Like, oh yeah, and then I'd have regrets later. Now I'm like laying out a pros and cons list, and I'm like, all right, look, pros and cons. And then, hey, Jenna, what do you think about this? My wife, Jenna. And she'll give me her yay or nay, and she'll add some new things to the list. And then I'll ask my grandmother, my parents to pray about it for me. And that has led me so far. That has been a great way to live and make decisions, especially big ones.
Yeah, I mean, because I can relate to you, like when the day that I said, like, went and signed that I was joining the Army, I didn't really tell anybody I was going either.
Yeah.
I just went down and was like, oh, yeah, okay, well, let's go, let's do this thing.
Yeah.
And came back and told my mom, and she was like, or no, so I came back, and on my way back from the recruiting station, my recruiter called my mom and talked to her.
Kidding.
And I was like, and so I come in the house, and, you know, she's like, anything new happened today? I'm like, no, you know, just playing this off, because I'm like, there's no way I'm telling my mom that I just signed up to go defuse bombs. It's not a thing.
Oh, God. And so your recruiter had that conversation. I'm sure that went over real nicely.
Oh, it was great, you know. So I go in the house, just like nothing's changed. Just came home from
She's
work.
probably like, is there something you would like to tell me?
Yeah, and that's basically like the tone I get. And I'm like, no, not really. And so then she alludes and keeps going down this rabbit hole. And I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, you know, I joined the Army today. She's like, do what? I was like, oh, yeah.
I'm convinced that we all have a very similar life experience. Like, moms are very similar.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, and my dad wasn't really like around. So it's not like they could both have this conversation and convince me to not do it. Because he was just more of a like, oh, that's what you want to go do? Go do it, man.
So my mom doesn't realize it, but she has a very high sales acumen. She could sell anything. And my dad is a very laid back individual, but if there's anyone that can get my dad bought and sold on anything, it's my mother. So if she convinces dad that it's the end of the world, he's on board with it. So, you know, but if I had made that decision out of high school, I am convinced that I wouldn't be alive to be telling. Nah, I'm just kidding. But no, they would have been fired up about that if I had made the decision in high school. And there's pros and cons to that. Like, I could be retiring in the next couple of years had I joined out of high school, but I probably wouldn't have had the success that I've had coming in with an older, more wise mindset.
Yeah.
Now I say that I was a kid all through my 20s. I didn't become an adult until I hit about 30, 31. That's when I began, like, that's when the maturity clicked for me.
Yeah. I think a lot of us, that happens, you know, because we go through, you get to about 25 and you're like, you know, maybe I should do something different.
Yeah. Well, I've had that many times, but I'm finally in a position now in life where I think I'm ready to settle in.
Yeah.
I take a lot of pride in what I do now. Policing.
I don't know any police officer who doesn't.
No, you take a lot of pride in what you do. You know, it's victim first, you know, and my mission has changed. It's now to serve my local community. It's not the state. It's not the country. Now, again, 1 week in a month, part-time as a guard member.
Yeah.
Still throwing the uniform and subject to taking orders, you know, 1 week in a month. And ultimately that could lead me to a bigger mission. But my mission's changed. Now it's to serve my local community, and I'm very content with that.
Yeah.
My family's all around here. My mother-in-law, my parents who don't live far from here actually. And then, you know, my wife and I, we grew up here. So, I love it.
Wouldn't change it for the world.
Not only that, my daughter and my wife, they both work here in the public schools. And so, like, I get to work, you know, closely with the schools, and, you know, we provide, you know, security for them. And should they need anything, I hope they don't, but should they, I'm going to be there quicker than just about anybody else to help in a time of need. You know what I mean?
I have no doubt.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and it's like getting.
And I can drive a car, son. That's one thing the Lord has blessed me with the ability. For some reason, He's just blessed. But I think it's because I've been driving. My dad, he bought me a go-kart when I was in 3rd grade.
There you go. Starting them evasive maneuvers early in life.
Yep. So, and then going to the police academy and going through, you know, defensive driver school only enhanced that. You know, it's like you start learning some of the like shelfless steering, for example.
Yeah, you have both the fancy stuff.
Yep. So it's you have a point of contact on the steering wheel at all times, even while you're steering. You know, you ever heard of feathering the pedal?
Oh, I've heard of it, but
yeah. So if you begin losing traction on a turn, you apply a slight amount of pressure to you're keeping power to the tires, and it keeps ultimately it just keeps you on the road. I don't know. I don't know the science behind it, but it works. It's effective.
It's like the old thing of breaking into the ice.
Like, yeah. Terrible idea. Yeah, terrible idea.
Well, I'm just convinced people here can't drive anyway. So
No, especially when it rains. That's when that's when 90% of the crash reports take place is during rain or inclement weather. But
oh yeah,
yeah, listen, when it snows, don't drive.
stay home.
Stay off the road.
That's your PSA for today. Stay home in the weather.
That's right.
So what's next for Doug?
Doug is going to serve his community at the highest capacity possible. I'm going to showcase some new things I've learned in the military. I've had an opportunity to be in a position of leadership for the last 6 years, and I'm ready to learn some new skills, but also showcase some new ones. And I certainly don't know it all, and I am excited to learn new things. But I believe I have a lot to offer, and I can bring some knowledge in from different perspectives, different organizations, and just show some of the things I've learned.
But yeah, I mean, you got a pretty diverse background of stuff.
Yeah, man. Yeah, God's had me all over the place. He's had me all over the place. But, it's like, I think it's been good for me to take that hiatus and learn some new things, because now I'm coming back with a new perspective. I might not be as fresh in some categories. Like, I need to brush up on case law, and I've been cramming new policies and procedures and case law and things like that, because one thing's for certain, I certainly want to make sure that I'm following the Constitution. I certainly don't want to violate anyone's rights. Like, I want to make sure I'm doing the right thing.
Right.
Again, I have a lot to catch up on. I've been cramming. And to be honest, not as much has changed as I thought. So I'm not as far behind as I would have thought I would be. But we'll see. So here's what I envision. I envision staying here, taking on some additional duties. I certainly don't want to stagnate. I don't want to stay put. I'm a patrol officer. Currently, I'm the most tenured patrol officer on the road as of today. So at some point, once I feel ready, I'd like to, maybe start with a field training program and help young officers as they graduate the academy.
Teach them how to drive. There you go.
Hey, look, and victim advocacy, because at the end of the day, like, it can be frustrating taking long reports for people, but these people need help. And a lot of times it's their first interaction with a police officer.
Oh, yeah.
And I want it from me. I want it to be a good one. You know what I mean? I want to build the public's trust. I want to help. I want to help build relationships. And not only that, it's a networking opportunity. You have no idea who you're going to meet out here.
Yeah.
And, you may need help at some point from that individual. And if you give them 110% effort, I'd like to think you might get that in return. You know what I mean? And I would do it even if they didn't, right? Like, even if they were, disliked me or they were rude or whatever, I'm still going to help them to the best of my ability.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's your job, but also it's who you are and wanting to take care of.
Because guess who's watching at all times?
There you go.
Our Creator. He knows. And I think he'll reward that. You know what I mean? If he sees me putting in 110%, I think there's a scripture about that somewhere.
Oh, there
maybe
is.
a time or two in the Bible, right?
At least once.
At least once. I think I can name 3. Hang on. I just don't know the passages. I don't want to butcher it here on the podcast, but I'll share them with you after this.
It's funny you mentioned your Bible earlier, because I remember being in reception and a guy coming around who later to find out is an Army chaplain. And he gave out a bunch of digital camo New Testaments.
Yeah.
And I still have mine.
Yeah. Well, if you want a newer OCP pattern style Bible, pocket Bible, I think I have one in my truck you can have.
And just let you know.
Yeah. Those are awesome, man. And man, chaplains.
I carried that thing everywhere with me.
We have a chaplain at the police department who is a phenomenal guy. Have you ever met Glenn?
Probably.
I believe it's Glenn Holman. He's such a good guy, genuine. And there's a few of those in the military, but some of the ones are kind of weird. I'm not gonna lie. They've been, slick back hair, raised in, lived in a bubble their entire life. And I don't speak for all of them, but it just seems like for a large portion of the chaplains in the military, have a stainless, spotless
Yeah.
career. And that doesn't resonate with everybody, because there's been people like me who have made mistakes, and it's like, I don't want to say judgmental, but yeah, maybe kind of a little bit judgmental at times. It's like, man, like this guy drinks beer on the weekends, or or is cussed, or, I don't
Yeah.
know, man. And I don't speak for all of them, but I've met a few that can come across a little bit judgmental at times. But we'll see, man. I actually just enrolled back to Liberty,
There you go.
so
Criminal justice, I would
starting
assume.
June 29th. Believe it or not, no.
Oh,
I'm pursuing. So yeah, I've talked to my wife, and I think we're going to maybe pursue a minor in criminal justice, because again, I do see myself being here for at least 10 or 15 more years to finish out my career. Furthermore, I have that paired with guard, so there's 2 retirements. But man, my heart is in the ministry. I think at some point I would love to, in some form or capacity, I would like to pastor.
I could see that in knowing you. I could see you as a pastor.
I appreciate that, man. That means a lot. And that's the highest, I think that's the highest calling on the planet.
One of the guys I went to X-ray school with years ago was a battalion ranger. And so him and we went through X-ray school. He used to tell me all these crazy ranger stories. And then we graduate, we go to different places, and I talked to him a couple of years later, and he'd gotten out of the Army. And I was like, well, what are you doing now? And he said, I've started a small group at our local church, and now I'm in school to go be a minister. And I was like, thinking in my brain, trying to rationalize all of these wild stories of being a deployed ranger. And now you're telling me you're going to go be a pastor.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I could see that, because I mean, he's a lot like you as far as his demeanor goes.
Yeah.
And things that he had seen. And he's like, I need to help people go through that and deal with that.
Yeah. Well, he's going to reach a specific crowd that might not otherwise hear the word unless it was through someone like him who have shared his life experiences. And I would, like, for example, I've talked to people, I have witnessed to people who I think and they've even told me, like, I've heard this before through like a church pastor, but it just didn't click. It didn't resonate.
It's not the same.
Because, I have shared my testimony with people with very similar backgrounds, and it tends to resonate more with people who are like-minded or in a similar career path. I don't know. I mean, our Christ calls us to discipleship, right? And I try to do it everywhere I go, whether it be in a police car or if I'm out in the field, or on a mission. I try to. Well, here's the thing. I can't, because if I was selfish and wanted to keep them all to myself, I would keep it bottled up. But I can't, man. He's been too good to me. I got to share the good news, man. And another thing too. What was I going to say? Yeah. So, I mean, I'm pursuing a degree in Christian leadership, with some pastoral ministry in there as well. So, looking to pursue. I mean, I've got like 2 years left. It's time to go ahead and knock. The guard's paying for it. The military's paying for it. Might as well utilize it. But yeah, man, we'll see. We'll see where life takes me. God, look, I want to stay here for another 10 or 15 at the police department, and that's the plan as of right now. If God has other plans, I'm willing to obey. You know what I mean? But we'll see.
It's like we were sitting at Ethan's graduation last night, and the guest speaker talked about, like GPS and how they're graduating, and life is full of just recalculating moments.
Yeah.
And I kind of was like, I could see that. You start thinking about things that you've been through.
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, that was definitely a recalculation.
Yep. Well, when you reflect on your life, and if you go into detail and you look back, even before I was a Christian, I can see where God has had his hand on me the entire time. Because I shouldn't be here talking to you right now. There's been experience. There's been things that have happened.
No, I can relate.
Yeah. Where
they go in the file of
where I've seen angels literally intervene.
Yeah.
When the only missile or the only grenade to not go off is one that could have perhaps taken you or your battle buddy's life, and it's the only dud out of the batch. It's like, come on.
Yeah, there's 1,000 of these, and that's the
and
one
I've
that
got
doesn't
tons
go
of
off.
examples. That's just one. You know what I mean? I've got tons of examples. So God he's had his hand on me the entire time. So shout out to God. He's awesome, man.
Well, I'll let you get back out to your booth, man. I appreciate you coming in and talking with us.
Thanks for having me, brother. Anytime.